All right, let's start. Okay, welcome everyone to the Flyte contributor meetup. I'm glad to see you all here. Today, August 31, and a couple of reminders. The meeting's being recorded and it will be posted to Flyte's YouTube channel, and this meeting falls under Linux Foundation's Code of Conduct. All right. Let's get started. So I'm sharing again here the link to the notes agenda. Feel free to add yourself to attend this list. Maybe this one is better, more specific to today's session. And someone joining for the first time? I don't think so. Right, let's move to the next item. I will share my screen real quick here and introduce new RFCs. As far as I can tell, there are not net new RFCs today. Many of them are in the implementation phase. Thank you. And there's one in review. Recently, Fabio and Dennis run, let's say, an experiment with this one. Any comment besides what's in the PR?
Yeah, I can maybe give some context about the experiment. So Dennis is a colleague of mine. He and I wrote this proposal, and we and Dan talked about it a few weeks ago, and Dan had a good idea how to implement it with a rather minimal change in Propeller, and had a feature branch where he implemented that idea, and we just ran that in our staging cluster and tried different scenarios, how basically compared the old logic, the existing logic, to the new logic for different scenarios to test basically whether this implementation does what we hope to achieve with the RFC. And we found that it basically does in almost all cases. And we made one small PR to adapt the one case where it didn't, which is that in the end, for the last retry, we switched to a non-preemptible instance always. And we made a small PR into the one from Dan, and we've been writing on Slack about it with Dan, and he says that there will be some discussions with union customers in the next week or the one after. He wants to make sure that also for them this solves the problem. And if yes, then I think at least we are very happy with the implementation. Dan, do you want to add anything? Did you talk to Eduardo about it?
No, didn't have a chance to have a conversation yet. Eduardo's actually out this week. So hopefully right when he gets back, we'll dive into that. But I think that's a fantastic synopsis of where we're at here. Like, the changes are very small to achieve this. I think there's a lot of open source users that have had a lot of questions on how retries work. And this fixes it very succinctly, I think.
Yeah. Maybe one more sentence about it. The main problems that our users had with retries is that so there are system failures, and there's a budget for those, and there are user failures. There's a budget for those, and the different plugins, they sometimes handle certain things differently. They count them towards a different budget. For example, the Python function task, it counts a preemption as a system failure because we can see from the events of the pod that it was preempted. The Kubeflow plugin, for example, doesn't, because the Kubeflow jobs, they don't show any sign of a preemption. You would have to look at the underlying pods. So for a Kubeflow distributed training job, the preemption counts as a user error. It counts against the retry budget defined as a task decorator, whereas for a normal pod, it would count against the system retry budget. In one case, we switched to a regular instance after in the end. In the other case, we don't, which has led to a situation where our engineers just don't use spot instances anymore because they're super confused. They never know what will happen now. They set like some number to task decorator, and then some other number of retries comes out because sometimes it's a system retry. And the idea is to not remove this differentiation between system failures and user failures in Flyte and Propeller, because it's really everywhere. But there's one function where we check whether a job is eligible for a retry. and there just have a switch in the platform config where a new behavior could be activated, where we basically add the two budgets together and just check, like, is there any budget left still? And that still means that in Propeller or in plugins rather, we'll still check for the Python function task whether it was a preemption. We still don't do it for example, Kubeflow distributed training jobs, but in the end, it doesn't have any difference in the user-facing way, at least, because everything counts against the number of retries set in the task decorator. And that makes it simpler for users because that's the only number that they need to be aware of. And for example, it also allows them to say, hey, we have this training here. The training is expected to run for 4 days. I don't mind if it gets preempted 10 times, whereas for another job, you might not want that because 10 would be like way too much. So yeah, I think let's wait what comes out of the discussions with your customers. And yeah, I'm curious what they say. I'm curious what Eduardo says. I think no rush to get it merged, but let's try to get it right. But at least the experiments we ran I think we were pretty happy with what we saw. No.
I have a question to have you. This is pretty cool. I would love to have this table in a doc, like in the Flyte docs once it's the feature is out, because I think it will clarify exactly what will happen in what scenario. So I think it's great. If you scroll down, David, maybe, yeah, the third from the bottom, where it used to do 2 retries and now it will do 1. It says system retries are now counted against the user-defined unified retry budget. Why did it do 2 before? Is that, did we have a,
there's a platform
remember that part? Okay,
so there's a value in the platform side that's 2 by default.
Okay.
And all system retries count against that.
I see.
And then we get questions from our users like, I said 5 here, why is it 2?
Hey, quick question. When you, in the middle 2 columns, when you say 2 retries, is that 2 executions or 2 retries? I'm sorry if you covered this already, I'm a bit late.
Yeah, to be 100% sure, I'd have to check again. I think it's like not executions, but actually retries. But it's kind of this one-off error. I need to check. I'm pretty sure it's retries, but I need to check.
This is everywhere in the code too, about like retries versus attempts. So 2 retries would be 3 attempts, right? You'd have the original one, and then it would be tried once, and twice would be 3 attempts, 2 retries, I believe, right, Fabio?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can check again. Like one-off errors are the only errors that are super annoying.
And then the last case, if you scroll all the way down, David, the but interruptible. So you're changing that behavior from switching to non-interruptible as the last one to keeping all of them interruptible.
So currently, it's implemented this way. When you set interruptible equals to true, then for the last system retry that you have, we switch to non-interruptible to guarantee completion. We don't do that for the user failures. But since with kind of this V2 version, which by the way is not the default, right? You have to activate that in the platform config to not make it breaking change. But in the future, since everything counts against this number of retries that the user defines, we would want that in the end, it always switches to non-preemptible instance because it's the kind of the last retry, right? Currently, it's only for system retries. And with the like V2 behavior, it's for the budget that the user defines, which is the only budget in the end.
Oh, sorry, I was looking at the columns wrong. The new code is what will switch to non-interruptible. I see, or user errors.
Yeah, because it's the user error, exactly.
Yeah.
For system failure, the existing implementation also switches, but only for system failures.
Yeah.
And Haitham, this is one point of contention right now that we're trying to iron out very very clearly is that like the interruptible failure threshold in propeller configuration right now is a positive number, like it's just 0, 1, 2, 3. And it's meant to play with like system failure configuration, which is also propeller configurable. So if you set 10 system failures, you want that threshold to be 9 so that the last one is. If we do this weird combination where users can now it's retried the number of times in the test, having that 0 to n number doesn't really make a lot of sense. What we want is a negative number. We want the last
Negative.
one. We try the last two. And so we're does it make sense to introduce a different configuration value for that, or how to do that? That's one point of contention on this. But I think saying the last one will be, I don't know. I'd like a configuration value for it, but I don't want to make this more complicated than it already is.
Yeah. So Dennis, I also had a discussion about it last week. I think it would be cool to not have it hard coded to 1, because sometimes like ML code is typically garbage, right? So sometimes it crashes for other reasons. So having a number that configures this is I think cool. I don't think I think it can be, for us, it could be a platform side config. I'm not sure about others, but for us, if there's like a negative number that we can set in the Helm values file, that would be perfect.
Right.
Not sure. Like, I'm interested what also your customers say about this. Maybe they want it in the task decorator, which of course would work for us. It's just more work, I guess.
Okay. Any other comment?
No, I would say let's leave the RC still in the kind of the discussing phase, right?
Yeah.
Then we'll talk to Eduardo, talk to union customers, and I think we can wait for that and then maybe have another discussion to see whether something new comes from that.
That sounds great. And then after that, we are pushing full force on this and getting it through. It's been open for quite some time now, so I'm excited to get this closed up.
Yeah,
I think on our end, sorry.
No problem.
I think on our end, we've seen very similar issues, probably, Fabio, to the ones you've seen. I've actually changed a doc once after a discussion in the Flyte Slack, and I think it's actually wrong now, because I think even in the Slack, a few people were confused about like what retry budget's consequence what, and whether you have to set retries for interruptible tasks and whatnot. Also, given that GCP continues to break their APIs, and then the automagical what is it called? The function that demystifies whether it was a
demystify failure.
Demystify failure, that is their API doesn't seem as stable. And I've recently chatted with them, and apparently it is not stable. That's what they say. So I think, given all of that, the new behavior could be really nice. I've also read the RFC, and it's I agree. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Bernard. Thank you all. All right. Okay. Next up in the agenda, working groups updates. Seems like there's a discussion on the third iteration of the proposal. Config overrides, I mean. Right. So any comment about the status of this working group's work? Nope.
I think the relevant people are not here.
Okay.
Proposal comes from the LinkedIn guys, and I think Yi was took part in the discussions.
Right. Okay, cool. Okay, next up in the incubator, ideas in the incubator. I didn't see any. Okay, yeah, nothing exactly new. Yeah, a couple of recent comments, but not anything really new there. Right. Any comments so far? Any other topic regarding proposals, RFCs? We can move to the next item otherwise. Okay, next one will be the open mic section. at least one topic. I have one. Probably this one, we need to announce this broadly to the community, but I'm sharing here with this audience. There's a new bot out there in the Flyte repo, in this case, looking for all issues, label them as stale if 9 months or more of not any activity, and providing warning and automatically closing after 7 days of inactivity. So just be aware of this. Yeah, we have a bunch of old issues open out there, and if you have any, you probably will see a note like this from the bot, and you can comment here. This is your issue. You can come in here and ask if you need to keep it open, otherwise will be closed, just to make sure that we have relevant issues open. Right, and next up, yeah, the identity aware proxy initiative from Fabio, which is great.
Yeah, like if I'm not sure, I talked about it last time, but I think different people were there. Shall I give like a few sentences of context again, or?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know if
Okay, I'll just say a few words about it. So GCP Identity Aware Proxy is a managed service by Google. It allows you to have a login basically at the load balancer. So requests that are not authenticated cannot even pass through the load balancer and can never reach the backend. Very easy to configure, theory. And because of that, several companies that I know and that I've worked at, but also others, have an internal security policy that whatever tooling is deployed needs to have identity aware proxy in front of it, because it allows you to sleep well, right? No unauthenticated request can ever reach the backend, so it doesn't matter whether the backend is implemented well or not well, because we don't have to trust it, right? Because we kind of trust that Google Cloud implements this properly, and then we just put this at the load balancer, and then nothing unauthenticated can ever reach the backend. So we have a security policy to use that. A previous company did too, and some others in Slack also said that they kind of need integration with that. And like workarounds are typically that people port forward Flyte admin to register and run workflows, or we make Flyte admin available in the VPC and then only register from VMs in the same VPC, or some people use VPN, like connect the VPC with the VPN and then have to be in the VPN to register. But all because basically Flyte control and Flyte remote, they can't talk to Flyte admin through identity aware proxy, and basically this PR attaches, or it adds two things. The first thing is that an external command can be executed to generate a token for identity aware proxy, and then we add it to the proxy authorization header, and then Flyte control and the remote, they can talk to Flyte admin, and the identity aware proxy just makes sure that this proxy authorization header contains a valid token, and then the rest of the authentication flows just as it is now. So it's like a second gatekeeper at the load balancer that makes sure that nothing that is not authenticated with Google can talk to any backends. And with that, yeah, for us, this would help a lot, because then we can register from notebooks. Currently, we can't because of kind of the security policy. And the guys from Freenome, they have the same security policy. They also want this integration. In this PR, if that's the FlyteKit PR, it adds this to FlyteKit. I'll still do the same for Flyte control. Basically, that these proxy authorization headers can be sent. And the PR includes a plugin that introduces a command to generate these tokens as an external command, reuses the existing mechanism, and it also contains documentation how to deploy this stuff on GCP, because the deployment is a bit complicated, because GCP requires encryption between the load balancer and the backend for HTTP2 services. But there's a README in the plugin that documents how to do that. Yeah, I'm happy that Python, you are in the call because he said that you should look over this. Do you have any questions of how this is integrated?
Yeah, I don't think I saw this before, so I'm still catching up. But a couple of questions. In this setup, do you enable authentication in Flyte admin or do
Yes.
you not? You do? Okay. So does the proxy forward some token to admin, or how does that work?
So there are two. That's a good question. There are two ways to do it. If you send an authorization, if you send an ID token as the authorization header to the ERP, it will validate it, it will strip it and replace it with a special token in an X Google JWT assertion header. So it replaces with another token that's in another header. And one could implement it in the backend in theory to interpret this token. In practice, it's implemented in a very not nice way from Google, because to validate the audience of the token, you need to know the so-called backend service ID, but you only get that after deploying. So you kind of have to deploy, get the ID, inject the environment variable, and then restart. That would be the idea to do it in the backend, and that gives me a lot of grief to kind of have to restart things to deploy them. The alternative would be to that Flyte control and remote send two tokens. They send a proxy authorization header and an authorization header. The proxy authorization header is for the identity by proxy. The authorization header is for Flyte. So the clients, they do the exact same authentication flows with Flyte as they do now, but they just send the second header to be let in the gate at the load balancer. So yes, we have authentication enabled in Flyte. Then there's kind of a double login, but you don't really notice it because we get the security from the identity by proxy. So we set the lifetime of the refresh token for Flyte to a week. So kind of once a week, maybe you see like a second login, but you don't see it in practice. Yeah.
I see. So is that like, is ideally this, you would use that secondary token, like is that the intended architecture, I guess, of designing your service, that you only trust the IAP token and then everything goes through that, and the client only authenticates once with the proxy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And how will and then authentication between like provider and admin, that happens with, like, I guess in one factor authentication because it's not going through the proxy in this case?
Yes, like it's now.
Okay.
There nothing changes.
Okay. Okay, cool. Yeah, well, thank you for doing this. I'm happy to take a look at the PR, and the Flyte CTL 1.2, which will end up being.
So currently, it's implemented for flight control. Sorry, for FlyteKit, it's implemented already. And I'll do another PR. I haven't started working on it, but I'll do that where I do it for Flyte CTL. And so this PR contains the logic in FlyteKit, the auth helpers of FlyteKit to add the second header. And it contains the plugin to generate this ID token for identity by proxy. And I assume that for flight control, we can use the same external command written in Python that gives us the token, and we just have to like attach it to the request.
Yeah. I think for the existing authentication, we try to make everything driven by the server. Like even the fact that you need authentication or not is a server response. This sounds like it will be more proactive. That like the client, once configured with this, will go get a token and attach it on every request. And maybe that's.
Can you scroll a little bit down, David? I think there should be like a line here. Do I have it here? Can you click on the tracking issue? I think there I have the line. It's you need to configure one thing on the client side, and that is one line in the here. So the way that I added it right now, but I'm happy to discuss this, I add this proxy command here in analogy to the command in the platform config, and that has to be set on the client side in order to add these proxy authorization headers.
But that
this
will
Flyte
also
IAP,
only be invoked. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
so this Flyte IAP command is also added in the PR. That's a plugin. What I like about it doing it this way is that if there's another managed service or some proxy in a kind of like a local cluster, can use the exact same mechanism. We just need to have another command that generates a token. Like GCP identifier proxy is not the only, like the proxy authorization header was not invented by them, right? Like others use this too. So if there is ever like another proxy that people want to use, they can use the same thing. Just have to have another token.
Does this have dependency on Google libraries, or how does that command work?
The command, no, let me think. It does, but we could probably even remove them. So there's the authorization client in Flyte that does a PXE authentication flow, right? I refactored the authorization client a tiny bit. Basically, I just make it configurable in the constructor which data you want to send with the requests, and then I reuse it to do a normal OAuth 2 flow with accounts.google.com. So it's very similar to the PXE flow. It's a standard OAuth 2 flow, and it uses logic that exists in Flyte for it. We have one dependency to a Google library, but it's only in this external command. It's not added to Flyte, because we want to retrieve a client secret from a secret in Secret Manager in Google. But it's there. It's not adding requirements to Flyte. It's only adding them to this plugin.
Sorry, I'm stepping back a bit. I think, are you saying this, the way you generate tokens for the IUP follows standard OAuth 2 PXE protocol?
It's not PXE.
That's
it's standard
what I heard
OAuth
you say.
flow.
The standard OAuth 2. Okay, so it's a user. It's a three-legged flow. There is a user involved. There is a browser that pops up and so on. Okay. I see. So, does it have to be implemented that way? Like, did we? Okay. I don't want to keep the meeting. I will take a look at the PR, and we can probably discuss either offline or in the next one. Okay, sounds good. Cool. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you both. Okay, any other question, comment about this PR? Right, seems like that's it in terms of agenda. Nothing else. Well, thank you all for joining. It was great to see you. And hope to see you in the next one.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Have a good day. Bye.
Bye.